Right now we're in Psalm 68, and this is an ideal psalm to be in. It's a messianic psalm, which means ultimately it's a psalm that talks about the conquering, reigning, ascension of the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And that is what we really celebrate at Christmas. We celebrate not just the incarnation, but the salvation produced through his atonement and resurrection, and one day looking forward to his second coming and new creation, total restoration, total renewal of all creation. So we pick it up today in the third paragraph. I think this is the third paragraph. Yeah, we've come through verses 1 to 6 and then verses 7 to 14. And now we begin a new paragraph. And we've been taking the psalm and breaking it down phrase by phrase and giving the sense of these things. Remember, we're dealing with poetry. So there's a lot of metaphorical, conceptual ideas woven into the phraseology. Secondly, we're dealing with Hebrew. Hebrew is a very conceptual language. So the direct, word for word, black and white, hard-edged translation process is just sometimes not easy and doesn't always convey the whole sense. It takes some connecting of dots and looking at context, especially in poetry. But then thirdly, we're dealing with ancient poetry. We're going back, 2,700 years, something like that. So these are concepts, but they're beautiful concepts. And so I want you to stick with me. Sorry, I keep losing my little bottle cap here. The hill. So verse 15, we're going to read through verse 21. Then I'm going to go back and break it down for just a moment. The hill of God is as the hill of Bashan, and high hill as the hill of Bashan. Why leap ye high hills? This is the hill which God desireth to dwell in. Yea, the Lord will dwell in it forever. The chariots of God are 20,000, even thousands of angels. The Lord is among them, as in Sinai, in the holy place. Thou hast ascended on high. Thou hast led captivity captive. Thou hast received gifts for men, yea, for the rebellious also, that the Lord God might dwell among them. Blessed be the Lord, who daily loadeth us with benefits, even the God of our salvation. Selah. He that is our God is the God of our salvation, and unto God the Lord belong the issues from death. But God shall wound the head of his enemies, and the hairy scalp of such an one as goeth on still in his trespasses. So, big picture, conceptually, I think you're already with me. You're seeing God is ascending, triumphant. He is setting his dwelling place, his place of ruling, his place of authority, his place of power, his place of victory. And out of that ascending, reigning place, he has secured gifts for men, including rebellious men. He is chosen to dwell among those men. He is blessing those men daily with massive benefits, loading them with benefits. And the ultimate benefit is salvation. So ultimately, he's not just a reigning God or a ruling God or a sovereign God. He is a saving God, verse 20. And he is the only God who can save from death, also verse 20. And he will ultimately and finally overcome his enemies and deal with those that choose to go on in their sin rather than trust him for salvation. Now that is kind of a synopsis of verses 15 to 21. Everything I just said. Now, because this is video, I'm not going to repeat it. You can click back and go back through it, and you can trace back through. But now let's break it down very specifically, okay? The hill of God is as the hill of Bashan. Bashan is the hills of the Golan Heights, and they are high hills. Today, northern Israel, they're the hills that were retaken from Syria, I want to say in the late 60s or early 70s. So they pushed Syria back because those hills were high, looking right down on the Sea of Galilee and the valleys around the Sea of Galilee, the Jordan Valley. And so Israel was just sitting ducks. They were just lobbing rockets all day into that valley and into different kibbutzes. And it was an untenable situation. So Israel engaged and pushed Syria back about 25 or so miles. The Syrian border moved. And so that range is now called the Golan Heights, and Israel controls that territory. That's the hill of Bashan. It's very fertile. They're very high hills. You can see almost the entire land of Israel from those hills on a clear day. And more importantly, for this passage, as you go south, they're now the hills of Jordan, which were Moab, Edom, Gilead, Moab, Edom, kind of going down that southern, along the east side of the Jordan River, going south. Okay, this huge mountain range. It's the mountain where Moses died. It was intended to be part of Israel in the promised land, in the conquering of the land in Joshua. So anyway, these are the hills where Israel's enemies gathered, looking down over. And frankly, to this day, they still do on some level, okay? These were the hills where they looked over and planned their siege against the northern kingdom, the southern kingdom, especially Jerusalem. So, for instance, when Sennacherib came down from the north, one of the one of the final Assyrian invasions, he would have come down through this area, okay, and been able to look over. So the idea of the hill of Bashan contrasted with the hill of God. The concept here is God's dwelling place versus the dwelling place of his enemies. Okay, so let's keep reading. Verse 16, why leap ye high hills? Now, the concept here of leaping is, now, let's just go with the English vernacular. Leaping, you've, as a kid, probably played leapfrog, where you're overcoming somebody and you're landing in front of them. You're leaping over. You are overtaking. Okay, you're rising above something or someone else. That's the concept here. It's not just like a gazelle leaping through a meadow. That's one application of the word, but it's a very literal sense of these hills, the enemies seeking to leap or to elevate themselves in authority and in prominence and power over God. It's what really all earthly powers are doing even today, okay? It is, frankly, why there's such dark sentiment against Israel and against Jerusalem, for that matter. Do you remember when the president was moving the American embassy to Jerusalem and declared the city of Jerusalem as Israel's capital, and acknowledged that, and the blowback from the liberal world and the godless pagan countries around Israel? They don't want the city of God to be the city of God. And Israel's enemies have always wanted to overcome the city of God. So why leap ye high hills? This is the hill which God desireth to dwell in. Yea, the Lord will dwell in it forever. Now, we're 11 minutes in, so I'm going to pause for today because this is huge. Joy to the world, the Lord is come. Let earth receive her King. Well, you and I receive our King in Jesus. One day the earth will receive her King, but today the earth does not receive her King. Kings do not bow before Jesus, and they do not like the concept of God having a place to dwell, having a mountain in which he will come and dwell in a new creation forever and ever. But he will. He promises that he will. And it is human nature to try to leap above the lordship of God, the lordship of Jesus in our lives. It's not just a nationalistic or a global problem. It's a heart problem. It's a spiritual problem. We all try to leap over God in our lives. And yet God is king. And anyone that tries to leap up against him is going to lose. So my friend, this week, submit yourself to your king. Follow him, trust him, love him. Whatever you do, don't try to leap over his lordship in your life. Now, we'll pick it up in verse 17 tomorrow. Happy Monday. Have a great day.